Imagine living alone in the heart of a dense forest. The sun sets, and mysterious sounds begin to appear. And every night, after 9 o'clock, he, the killer, creeps in. But the real shock, when you discover who he really is. Before you dive into this terrifying story with us, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button, so you can receive all the stories that turn sleep into a nightmare. Stay put and turn off the lights, because what you hear might change your life forever. My name is Brian. I'm 16 years old, and I live alone in an old house on the outskirts of a forgotten village, surrounded by forest on all sides. That house is inhabited by damp, battered by winds, and its roof leaks every winter. But that doesn't seem strange, because everything in this village is dying. Since my mother's death, I've seen the world in gray. As for my father, he passed away a year before her, crushed by a tree while working in the forest. I was left alone, a child who knew nothing about life, faced with only two choices: to live, or to die like they died. I grew up burdened by my years. Every morning, I wake up before sunrise, carrying a bucket of water waiting for it to fill up from the well, cutting firewood and selling it, washing away my words with silence, and keeping my mouth shut in front of people. The villagers aren't bad, but they aren't kind either. They treat me like I'm an anomaly in a dead tomb. They avoid talking to me, and even greetings have become cold, as if I were a disease, or a curse. The village is very small, with only a dozen houses still standing. The rest have been destroyed over time. It is inhabited by elderly people, widows, and people who look alive, but their eyes are filled with death. There is no school, no market, no health center. A single dirt road is all that connects us to the outside world, and even taxis don't enter it. Amidst this cursed silence, there was the forest. The forest surrounds us like a living, suffocating wall. But it's not an ordinary forest. There's something unnatural about it. Every night, I hear footsteps in the darkness. A badger? A wolf? No. Heavy footsteps. No one can believe them. It's as if something is walking on all fours, but it's not an animal. The villagers speak of the forest butcher, a mysterious entity that kidnaps anyone who sneaks in without permission. Some see him as a myth, others have lost loved ones because of him. As for me, I had an experience that made me believe. One autumn day, I was searching for medicinal herbs in the forest. I walked a little further, and the sun was about to set. I stopped to drink some water. That's when I heard it. A scream. Not an animal's scream. It was a human scream. Then, a silence like death. I hurried back home, and that night I didn't sleep. The walls whispered, the wind whistled, and my mind was filled with questions. Since that day, my life has been a hostage to horror. Not the horror of movies, but the horror that lives with you, eats with you, and smiles when you tremble. I am Brian, and this is my story. The story of a child who grew up without love, without safety, in the middle of a slowly dying village, and a forest that knows the truth, but refuses to reveal it. The villagers fear something unnatural, something that only appears after 9 o'clock at night. As for me, I grew up with this fear. Everyone says, close the door before 9 o'clock. Don't go out, no matter what you hear. If you want to stay alive, forget the road after 9. When I was young, I didn't understand why. But now, at 16, I know. I saw. I heard and smelled blood. The first time I heard about it, I was in the shop buying bread. The old man who sold it whispered, as if the walls were listening. It emerges from the forest like smoke. It moves silently, and every step takes a soul with it. I laughed then. I couldn't believe it. But that laughter never came again. Every night, at 9 o'clock, the village turns into a ghost town. The windows are closed. The doors are locked. And stillness. A stillness that penetrates your depths until you hear your heartbeat, and you wish it would stop so no one else could hear it. One night, I was turning off the lights in my house, and I heard footsteps. I'm not exaggerating when I say they were footsteps on the sand, slow, hesitant, as if their owner were watching me from afar. They came closer, and closer. Then, a faint tapping sound on my window. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Even my tears refused to fall. A harsh, cracked breathing sound, as if a choking animal was standing right in front of my window pane. I knew this was the moment everyone was talking about. And that voice? It wasn't a human voice. I heard it speak, in a voice I'd never heard before. It wasn't the voice of a man, a woman, or any rational being. It said, "How beautiful sleep is, before death." And before I could scream, silence fell. All that remained was the smell of blood and a small red stain on the glass. Since that night, I've been locking everything before 9 o'clock. But that's not always enough. People call him the Ripper. But anyone who's seen him knows he's not human. He thrives on terror. He doesn't just want you to be afraid, he wants you to revel in the terror, to beg for death, but he won't give it to you until he's completely satisfied with you. And that night, 9 o'clock struck, and I heard a violent knock on my door. The knocks on the door were cold, carefully calculated, as if the person behind them knew exactly what he was doing, and why. I was cowering in the corner of the room, shivering in a cold sweat, trying to control my voice so as not to betray my fear. But my heart? It was pounding like a drum at a mad party. 3 knocks, then silence. A voice came from behind the door. A voice that cut through the skin. Rough, steeped in anger, but as cold as a knife. "Brian, do you know what happens to those who don't respect time?" My blood froze. "I like you, not because you're brave, but because you breathe terror, and you don't scream." His footsteps drew closer to the door. I felt him touch it, his bare fingers brushing it slowly, as if he were reading my heartbeat through the wood. "Do you smell it? This is the scent of death, and I brought it with me." At that moment, I wanted to scream, to cry, to flee, to break out of my own skin. But my legs were paralyzed. The voice returned. I break bones to hear their pleas. I smash faces to recognize the shape of the last scream. "As for you." He paused for a moment. Then he continued, even colder. "You, stay. I haven't had enough of you yet." And then, a terrible silence. No footsteps. No whispers. No presence. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then the whole night, and my eyes hadn't tasted sleep. In the morning, I emerged like someone who had survived a battle. I found the door scratched with 3 long marks, as if claws had been dug into it. From that moment, I knew one thing. I was within the butcher's reach. But he hadn't decided to kill me yet. And that is what terrifies me most. Since that night, my life has become empty, meaningless, colorless, and insecure. I wake up with my feet paralyzed from terror. I walk on tiptoe, eating with hands that tremble weakly. And every day, the same nightmare repeats itself. The clock strikes 9 at night. I turn off the lights, lock the doors, tuck my head under the blanket, and hold my breath. Not because I want to, but because I have to. During the day, I go out in search of a morsel of food to satisfy my hunger, a little milk, something to sustain myself. I work in a small blacksmith shop that barely provides me with the money to survive. People in the village have become silent. They don't talk much, as if they know some disaster is lurking among them. But they say nothing. As for me, I've become afraid of every sound. Every light tapping on the windows, the buzzing of insects, the footsteps in the alley. I imagine the killer lurking around every corner, watching me. Like a patient beast, feeding on my terror before devouring me. Sometimes, I sit on the doorstep in broad daylight, watching the children laugh and play. And envying them. I'm no longer living. I'm just continuing to survive. And in all honesty, fear is slowly killing me. More so than the killer himself. The day was slowly creeping in, and I was sitting, as usual, on the edge of the threshold, sipping cold, tasteless tea. The quiet of the village was frightening me. It was like a ghost town breathing muted sounds. Suddenly, I heard a man speaking loudly to the shopkeeper. Whoever brings me blood tree wood from the Sagia El Hamra region, I'll give them $100 cash. I immediately raised my head. Blood tree? I knew it well. It's a little far from the village, deep in the forest, next to the deserted valley. But $100? That number pierced my mind as if a voice from heaven was calling me. I went up to the shopkeeper and asked him, "Is the offer still on?" He replied, "Yes, but no one dared to do it. Everyone fears that area. The butcher is hiding near that deserted place." He paused for a moment, then added without hesitation, "I'll go." He looked at me as if bidding farewell to a dead person. He didn't say anything, just described the place and advised me to be in the forest before noon, and to leave before 8. I returned home. I took my small axe, a well-hidden knife, a water bottle, and a small bag. I put on a heavy jacket and hid my deceased father's amulet in my pocket, just to feel some security, even if it was an illusion. And I set off. Every step into the forest was like the beating of a drum. My heartbeat was louder than the chirping of the birds. The forest? Silent. Cold. Strange. And a damp smell clung to your throat, never leaving you. I reached the blood tree. It stood in the middle of a clearing, like a sick queen among her dead servants. Its wood was red, as if blood had frozen inside it. I began to cut slowly from its trunk. My hands worked, but my eyes wouldn't leave the forest. I could feel eyes watching me. Not the eyes of an animal, but eyes that knew you, hated you, and laughed at your weakness. I gathered the required amount, tied the wood, carried it on my back, and began the return journey. The sun began to disappear, and shadows crept across the path. The birds fell silent, and everything fell silent. Then, I heard a branch snap behind me. I stopped. I breathed. And I didn't turn around. Go on, don't stop. And with every step, I felt a breath close to my neck. But I honestly didn't turn around, until I saw the village lights looming on the horizon. I arrived. My feet were torn, my back was burning, and my heart was about to explode. But you know what's most important? I had no regrets. At least, I poured my fear and anger into something tangible. And bought myself, and my days, another day of life. I returned to the village, my blood boiling, death creeping behind me, but it didn't touch me. I entered the store and placed the bundle in front of the man. He stood without a word, looked at the wood, and began to feel it as if it were something rare and precious. He went to the cash register, took out $100 bill, and held it out to me, as I stood like a ghost in broad daylight. I took it. And just like that, I forgot the fear. I forgot the forest. I forgot everything. Do you think I felt joy? Yes. I felt it, but it was a hollow joy. Cold, silent, like a momentary escape from a postponed death. He kept staring at me, then said seductively, "What do you think? Every day you bring me a little, and I pay you. I take care of you, you won't need anything anymore. You eat, you drink, you live like a king." I was silent. His width was like a large door opening in front of me. A door I didn't know where it led, but it was bathed in light. And I was immersed in darkness. So I accepted. Without thinking, I accepted. From that day on, every morning I would wake up early, murmur an inner plea, and enter the forest. I would chop wood, return before sunset, collect my money, and go to sleep like a breathing dead creature. But, starting on the third day, I began to feel that something was wrong. Every time I returned from the forest, I would feel a shadow following me. A stifling silence wrapped around my neck. A sense that the trees were watching me. And that this wood was not ordinary. That man's face, it changed every day. It transformed little by little. His eyes shone with something I could no longer recognize. A joy unlike that of a human being, more like that of a demon who had gotten what he wanted. But greed was silencing me. Every time I said to myself, just one more day, just one more day. And every day, I was getting closer to hell. I knew something was getting closer. Slowly, but never slowing down. And whoever starts with greed, ends with regret. Day 4. I woke up early, as usual. I washed my face with cold water that paralyzed my chest, and put on my clothes, which were now tattered from so many trips into the forest. It was silent, more so than usual. Not even the birds were singing, and the forest looked like an open grave. I whispered to myself, I'll just get the wood and come back. I took my usual route, the one I'd memorized tree by tree. I reached the tree from which I was cutting that special type of wood, and began to work. My sweat was dripping, my hands were aching, but on my mind there was only one thing, money. I gathered the wood and tied it with rope. I stood to catch my breath. But suddenly, I heard a faint sound coming from among the trees. It sounded like someone was walking with heavy boots over dry leaves. I stopped and caught my breath. I grabbed the rope and began to drag the wood to leave. But the sound got closer. I turned slowly, and then I was shocked. There was a person standing in the distance. His features were unclear, but his height was evident, as was the white mask on his face. A mask that looked like a dead man's face. Black eyes, a bloody mouth. He was standing there, just staring. Not moving. Not hinting. Just watching. I said to myself, maybe I'm imagining. I turned my back on him and started walking, dragging the wood behind me. But I hadn't taken 5 steps until I heard the sound approaching. I turned around and saw him advancing. He was walking slowly, but with each step the earth was crunching beneath him. I ran without realizing it. I left the wood behind me and began to sprint into the forest. The sound pursued me, and my heart pounded like battle drums. I heard his footsteps, and felt his presence getting closer and closer. I hid behind a tree, trying to hold my breath. Moments later, I heard his breathing. Close. So close. Like a dog smelling my scent in the air. I don't know how long I remained hidden. But suddenly, there was silence. Every sound disappeared. I began to move slowly, checking to see if the path was clear. And suddenly, from behind a tree opposite, he emerged. He stood in front of me. That mask. Those eyes. That stained mouth. And the knives gleaming in his hands. I froze. My body stiffened, and terror paralyzed my bones. But my mind shouted, "Run!" I jumped, I ran, I stumbled, I didn't know where. Was I returning to the village? Or running without a direction? The entire forest turned into a dungeon, and the trees became walls that suffocated me. And his footsteps got closer and closer. I approached the outskirts of the village, and my breath was about to stop. But he didn't catch up with me to the end. He stopped at the edge of the forest. He stood there watching me. Then, in a low voice, as if speaking to my shadow, he said, "Next time, you won't be so lucky." He turned and disappeared into the trees. As for me, I fell to the ground, crying, breathing hard. Not just from fear, but from the thought that ran through my head. This person is no stranger. This butcher knows me. I spent days silent, hiding, living only on scraps of bread and water. My money ran out, the cold crept into my bones, and the darkness no longer terrified me. It became like a familiar companion. My stomach was burning with hunger, and my eyes raked the house in search of something to eat. Then the thought hit me like a slap. Either I go back to chopping wood and take a risk, or I stay here and starve to death. I stood, my body trembling, but my heart muttered inwardly, "Go back. He can't always be watching you. Maybe you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." I took the same old road. The same smell of damp and dust, the same gloomy trees. But this time, my heart was beating like the drums of the end. I arrived. I grabbed the axe and began chopping. Fear was gnawing at me, but hunger was stronger. I finished my work, gathered the wood, and began dragging it behind me. And suddenly, a bitter cold hit my back. A strange sensation, as if someone was breathing behind me. I turned slowly, and there he was, the killer. Standing, silent, but the mask he wore today was different. It wasn't just a mask. It was like a dead human face, moving without expression. And in his hand, one was covered in dried blood. The other held an axe that looked new, but was covered in fresh blood. My body didn't obey my mind. No thoughts, no plans, just a survival instinct. I started running. No, flying. My feet didn't touch the ground. As if I were in a race to escape hell itself. I could hear his voice behind me, his footsteps, his breathing. One of them touched my ear, and I was about to fall. But I kept running. The forest held me back, branches catching on my clothes. But I felt nothing. Everything faded away. Except for one thought, survive. I was exhausted. My knees began to give out. But in the darkness, I saw a house. An old house, its roof collapsed, its windows broken, and its door partially open. I entered. I closed the door behind me and caught my breath. Silence. But it wasn't a comfortable silence. Rather, the silence of something watching you. I turned on the small light I had with me, and shone it on the walls. And my breath froze. The walls were stained with blood. The marks of torn hands, and knives hanging on the kitchen door. The smell? A musty smell, as if rotten flesh had been there for months. I turned around slowly, and saw his image. The same mask. But this time, it wasn't just a drawing. It was a family portrait, him, a woman, and a small child. I felt the heat engulf me. I turned to escape. Then the door opened slowly, and I heard his voice, that voice like the edge of a razor. "You're home. Welcome." I froze. This house. His house. I had entered the monster's nest, with my own hand. I was terrified. Sitting in this abandoned house, as if I'd found temporary shelter. But my heart still beat like the drums of war. The forest was completely silent. Even the wind had stopped stirring the leaves. I felt as if I were in a cemetery. It was impossible that there was any sign of life inside this house. I stood in the middle of the room, searching with my eyes for a place to hide. But something on the wall caught my attention. A picture, hanging, covered in dust, but clearly visible. I approached it cautiously, and with every step my heartbeat increased, as if some secret awaited me behind it. I wiped the picture with the end of my shirt sleeve, and began to contemplate it. In it, a tall man, dressed in black. His eyes glowed like embers, and on his face was the same mask I'd seen on that butcher. Beside him was a woman, her eyes dimmed, but her features held a strange warmth. Her hair was tied back, and her arms were tenderly open. In the middle of them, a small child, no more than 3 years old. His resemblance to me was terrifying. I began to examine the picture eagerly. On the side, a single word was written. Brian, 2009. My breath caught. That child. Was it me? I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. My head was spinning, and my mind refused to believe. But my heart knew the truth. The killer was my father, and the woman was my mother. I held the picture with trembling hands, and began to breathe heavily. It was as if blood was rushing into my ears, and the sounds of internal explosions were raging in my consciousness. How could this nightmare be part of my life? Was I born in this place? Did I escape from it, and forget? Maybe I was too young back then, and I lost my memory. Or someone erased all of that from my mind. But why? Why did my father turn into a murderer? Did he want to kill me? Or did he want me to remember? To relive everything? I sat on the ground, with the photo in my hands. Everything was intertwined, everything was shattered. I thought I was living a horror story from the jungle. But the truth is that horror runs in my blood, in my roots. And this house was not a place of escape. It was the origin of the nightmare. The house was silent, nothing broke the darkness except my ragged breathing. I held the photo in my hands, while my mind boiled with questions. Suddenly, the door of the house opened violently, and a rush of cold air rushed in. Heavy, harsh footsteps approached, tearing the silence apart. It was him, the butcher. He stopped at the threshold of the room, his mask gleamed in the dim light, the axe in his hand, the scent of blood and mud preceding him. He remained silent, and I didn't run away this time. We stood face to face. He said in a hoarse voice, "Here you come, to your grave." I raised my eyes to him, no fear or hesitation remained in me. "Father." Time froze. The butcher remained motionless, his voice trailed off, and his hand trembled slightly, as if he hadn't expected to hear that word, "Father." I took a step forward, my voice trembling but steady. "Why?" Silence. "Why did you leave me? Why did your life turn to blood and slaughter? Why do you want to kill your son?" The axe fell from his hand, and silence suffocated us both. He slowly removed the mask. It was the face of an exhausted man, cracked with grief, his eyes brimming with suppressed tears. "I didn't want to. I didn't intend to." His words were broken, like someone who'd lost everything and was searching for justification amidst the devastation. "Your mother was the light of my life, and when she left, I died with her." He paused for a moment, then continued in a broken voice. "They said she died in an accident, but the truth, I was the reason. I was angry, and I lost control." "You killed her?" I interrupted him. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "Yes, and since that day I've lived in the jungle, killing everything. I wanted the world to taste the hell in my chest." "And your son? You wanted to kill me too?" "I didn't know you, Brian, until I saw you in the woods and felt something pulling me toward you. But I was so deep in the darkness that I didn't recognize you. I was silent, my heart swirling between anger and pity, between father hatred and bloodlust. Please, my son, forgive me. He took 2 steps and knelt before me, my father, the butcher, the monster, kneeling like a lost child. If there's any mercy left in you, forgive me. And at that moment, I faced the most difficult decision. Do I return blood for blood? Or break the chain of violence once and for all? Son of the forest. Son of pain. Son of blood and regret. I was looking ahead of me, a man dressed in the hide of a beast, his eyes filled with years of regret. But I was no longer that little boy. I had seen death. I saw heads thrown, flesh torn on the ground, and I smelled blood permeating the wood. And I saw an image of me, my mother, my father, the butcher. The world spun in my head. My heart began to pound like thunder, and something inside me snapped. My voice rose. Forgiveness? After everything I've done? I was trembling. I walked straight towards him and punched him in the chest. Then I punched him again, this time accompanied by sobs and screams. You killed my mother. All my life I've wondered, why all this suffering? And today, you answered me. The reason was your blood running through my veins. He remained silent, unmoving. But I didn't stop. The smell of blood in this house suffocates me. The screams of the victims still linger in the walls, their dried blood imprinted on the floor. Then you come to say, sorry. His eyes kept staring at me. But his features began to change. He was no longer standing in the victim's shoes. The flames of evil slowly began to return to him. He said in a low voice, I just wanted to die here, but I regretted it. No. I screamed. Your regret isn't enough. I no longer want to be your son. I'm not the son of a butcher. I began to beat him with my hands, with all my might, and each blow brought more tears than it hurt. My whole life was a lie, and I blamed fate. And I didn't know that the cause of my tragedy was your blood flowing inside me. He slowly raised his head and said, now, you're starting to resemble me. I froze. What did he say? You began to feel the anger, how it settles in the heart, how it burns, how it drives you to become a monster. I began to recoil, and his words pierced me like bullets. Kill me then. Do as I did. Let the blood guide you. Show me how different you have truly become from me. I began to choke. The blood, the anger, the memories, the voices, the faces. They all gathered over me, suffocating my breath. I saw my hands filled with blood. And I felt my heart begin to cool. And I understood. I was about to become him. But I am not him. I am Brian. I am not a killer. I am not a butcher. I cried. I cried in front of him, and whispered, I will not be like you. I will not be. And we fell silent together. And in the midst of that silence, I felt the end approach. That moment remained etched in my heart like a rusty dagger. Standing before me, the butcher, the father, the monster who had destroyed my life. His eyes held nothing. No remorse, no malice, no sorrow, just a deadly emptiness. And I stood, the axe in my hand growing cold, my heart burning. There was an inner voice, silent but clear. Brian, his blood is yours, murder runs through your veins. Without hesitation, without tears, without thinking, I lifted the axe and struck. One blow. I split his body in two. I felt nothing. I didn't cry, I didn't tremble. I just stood there, watching the blood drip onto the floor. I spat on his split face. This is the end of the butcher. I came out of that hell and set him on fire. The whole house erupted in a red flame. The smell of burning flesh and dark memories rose with the smoke. I didn't look back. I walked. I returned to that tree, the wood tree. I began to chop it down as I always did. But now, every stroke of the axe freed me even more. I could hear the birds singing, feel the forest breeze, and my feet sinking into the earth. And among the branches, there was light, the light of a liberated soul. I returned home at 10 in the evening. My stomach was growling with hunger, but my heart was still, calm. That night, I slept. And I dreamt of my mother, standing in the light, saying to me with a smile, "Son, you have liberated your soul." Dawn came, and the sun began to creep through the mist. I dressed, washed my face, closed the door, and headed to the village square. I gathered the people. Women, old men, children, everyone came. I stood in front of them. My voice was steady, cold, and clear. "The butcher is dead. I killed him." Someone laughed from behind. "What are you babbling about, little one?" And another said, "You just want to make a name for yourself." I didn't answer. I stood still. My face didn't move. But on the horizon, smoke began to appear. The wind carried the scent of ash, and the axe in my hand was still wet with blood. One of the elders said, "Perhaps he's telling the truth." His face changed. It became as cold as death. The whispering began, then doubt. Then the doubts turned into certainty. I returned to my house, locked the door. But at night, they knocked on my door. They brought food, mattresses, and even animals. They said to me, "You have saved us from our suffering. You have saved us. You have become one of us and in us." They treated me like a king. They drowned me in bliss. But I remained the same Brian. Son of the forest. Son of blood. My heart would never be pure again. But today, I am the one who owns my destiny. And every night, when the moon shone in the sky, I heard the wind in the forest, whispering, moaning, saying, "Thank you, Brian."
Brian killed his father, killed the darkness that lived within him. But did he really get rid of everything? Or did he start a new chapter, in a deeper darkness? Thank you for following the story to the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And share with us in the comments your most exciting moment. And stay tuned. The horror isn't over yet.